Hello, welcome to Gunpowder Fiction and Plot. I'm Scott.
I'm Nelle, and if you're new, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. We talk about books and ideas.
And give this video a thumbs up. We've not even told you what it's about yet, but thumbs up, yeah? Today we're going to do 10 books that we'd like to reread.
Ooh, I like this. There's different reasons that I like to reread, and I think that my list sort of shows you all the reasons that I like to reread.
The first one that I want to reread is The Master and Margarita. I loved The Master and Margarita. I gave it 5 stars. It was excellent, but I read an abridged version of it.
I know.
And this could go from an excellent 5-star book to literally one of the best books I've ever read with a bit more
Or
detail.
it could be horrible.
Or it could be horrible.
Oh, that's so exciting.
So I'm really loving this. The themes in this book is good. One of the quotes from this book, and I really liked it, it's absurdist black humour that is talking about something more. It's a really interesting book. One of the jokes is the author puts a manuscript in the oven, and then the devil comes along and takes it out of the oven and says, "It's a book, you can't burn books," and he puts it on the fire and it doesn't burn. Which I thought was sort of summed up A, the sense of humour, and B, the absurdist, and you've also got something much deeper happening at the same time, which is, pretty easy to see.
Yeah.
So The Master and Margarita is the first one on my list of books to reread.
That's my first one. Oh, Little Women. This is a nostalgia read. I read Little Women if I'm sad or lost or confused and I need some reassurance. It is home. It is one of the earliest books that I read on my own. I guess every bookworm identifies as Joe, but I was a bit of a bookworm and a bit of a tomboy.
Do you want to tell the viewers what it's about?
They know what it's about. Everyone's read Little Women, and if they haven't, they should go and do it right now.
People who haven't read Little Women.
Right now.
There is a movie about it as well, so if they haven't read it, they probably do know what it's about.
I did watch Books and Lala reading. She did a reading vlog
and
of
she read
Little
it for
Women.
She read it for the first time. See, people haven't read Little Women.
I so enjoyed watching her experience and connect with the characters for the first time. I wish there are some books I wish you could read for the first time again, and this is totally the one for me. It is so familiar. I know every crack and cranny of this book. My copy has photographs pasted in the flyleaf from high school of all my friends, and it's a really comforting book for me. Yeah.
Okay, well, do you want me to just boil over that and tell you what book I want to read for nostalgic purposes?
Yeah, go ahead.
I want to read a bit more about Davy Balfour and Kidnapped. Scottish Highlands, the Jacobites. It's a Robert Louis Stevenson adventure. It was my favourite book as a teenager, and I want to see if I still...
love it.
And still love it, because I haven't read it since I was 15 or 16. So, but it is a Robert Louis Stevenson, so it is basically a young adult book before young adult was really a thing.
That's an interesting one.
Yeah.
What's next?
What's next?
Ooh, The Goldfinch. I've just finished it. I want to reread it. The reason I want to reread The Goldfinch is because I think with anything really dense with imagery and symbolism, you read sort of the first time to get an idea of the surface plot and maybe poke around a little bit in the themes, but it's really on the second read that you pick up. You've got an idea of what they're talking about already, and so those repeated themes that are sort of more subtle throughout such a long book, they just stand out all the more to you. I definitely didn't pay enough attention to when they were first talking about the idiot in
the Dostoevsky book.
Yes, sorry. When they're first talking about that, and then they come back to it, and I was completely unprepared, and I had not paid enough attention to them when they were talking about it the first time, and little things like that I know on the reread will just give the whole thing more colour than it's brilliant on the first read, and on the second I think it'll be a richer tapestry.
I know you enjoy Dostoevsky, and I know you haven't read The Idiot, and Donatart references The Idiot in this book. Will you read The Idiot before rereading Donatart's?
Potentially, and I think we'll get to that soon, but I think reading order is another reason to reread, because you might need to read a reference book before you read a...
Yeah, totally. And Donatart...
so many references.
References a lot, and
not just books, like art, and like... Before I reread the Goldfinch, I will try and go and look at it.
Yeah.
Preferably in a gallery.
Next on my list is 100 Years of Solitude by Gabriel Garcia Marquez.
Oh, I haven't read this one.
Okay, so if there's a book I don't get, it's 100 Years of Solitude by Gabriel Garcia Marquez. It's not that I don't get it, I do get bits of it, but there's just that there is so much to get. There's a lot going on, there's a lot of characters, it's very complex, and I think that this is exactly the perfect book to read multiple times to get more and more out of it. Gabriel Garcia Marquez is one of these authors that we'll be talking about in 100 years' time. Still, he is very smart, revolutionary, and Colombian. So if you haven't read a Colombian author, check him out. I haven't said what this book's about yet. It is one of the first magical realism books. It's the story of a village going over a time period of 100 years. And it's sort of an intergenerational book, and it's a book about revolution and romance and just so much. I feel like I can't summarise this book and be accurate.
Yeah.
But essentially...
Like all good books.
Like all good books. But essentially too much going on for me to appreciate in one reading is the reason I want to reread this. And I didn't actually enjoy this book very much the first time, and I think that I will enjoy it more as I am comfortable with the plot and I can then explore the themes. Much like you've said about the Goldfinch, but I know you enjoyed the Goldfinch a lot.
I did enjoy the Goldfinch, but I also think that that's a bit of a practiced readership skill of being able to enjoy it before you understand it.
Yes. And the more I read, the better I get at that skill, but I'm terrible at that skill.
East of Eden. I want to reread it because it was delicious.
Is that just it's good, I want to do it again?
It totally is. It's like a wicked roller coaster. And it took me a while to actually finish it. Yeah, it is totally a bit of a commitment. And when you're weighing up the dilemma of do I reread a book and get deeper and more intimate with that book, or do I read a new book that could also be interesting? Like, that's such a hard call to make, to reread a book. You only get so many books in your life.
Yes. East of Eden is a story about twin brothers and their parents.
Yeah, it's been allegorical for Cain and Abel.
Very good and evil. Lilith is in it. Adam is in it.
It's, again, a book that's too big to summarise, and Scott will forever force me to try.
I just want to give our viewers something to, like, this book is good, read it, is not really the
Totally, that's totally just read it. Read more. That's what I want you to do. I want you to read more.
Steinbeck is an excellent writer.
Steinbeck is definitely one of my favourite writers. I went on a bit of a gallivant around the States in my early 20s. When I was in my 20s, I went and did a bit of an adventure in the US, and one of my favourite stops was to go to Salinas. And, just to see the landscape of Steinbeck, essentially. having been there now, I want to read East of Eden again.
All right, my next book, instead of saying it, I'm going to read 2 quotes, and I think that this will... Thanks, Bryn. I think that this will make it really obvious what the book is. He shall never know I love him, and that's not because he's handsome, but because he's more than myself. Whatever our soul's made of, his and mine are the same.
Oh, I know that.
You know that? Well, the next one will make it much more obvious. My love for Linton is like foliage in the woods. Time will change it, I'm well aware, as winter changes the tree. My love for Heathcliff resembles the eternal rocks beneath, a source of little visible delight, but necessary. Nellie, I am Heathcliff. He's always, always in my mind, not as a pleasure, any more than I am always a pleasure to myself, but my own being. I rated Wuthering Heights 1 star when I read it. And those 2 quotes are incredible quotes that she can write, Emily Bronte, right? Why on earth did I rate a book with words like that in it 1 star? I have to give it a second chance.
Kate.
To upset Kate. I actually know why I rated it 1 star. I felt like Heathcliff was so angry, and then he did nothing with his anger, and there was no... It was like a fizzing out.
You felt like he didn't live up to his potential.
I felt like he was always saying, Linton, I'm going to smack you in the nose, you asshole, or whatever the other character was that he didn't like, and then he never followed up and smacked him in the nose. Felt like there was going to be some big like explosion where he kills all the people trying to steal Kathy from him, or some revenge or whatever, and it just doesn't.
Yeah, okay.
It just doesn't follow through. But I think that may be a bit of a naive interpretation of what went on, and that I should give it a second shot. And it was a book I read very early in my reading renaissance, and I suspect now that I've got a few more books underneath me, I'm in a better position to appreciate it.
Yeah, okay. I think that's probably fair. I was very shocked and appalled when you didn't like that book.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, it's not... I mean, it's my best friend's favourite book of all time, and it's not my favourite book of all time. But I did feel like you were probably a bit grumpy when you read it.
I definitely think I picked on one thing that I didn't like and overstated the value of that one thing.
Yeah. So for me, the next book is The Book of Daniel. The Book of Daniel by E.L. Doctorow, I often say, is my favourite book. I don't like to compare books because I feel it detracts from my enjoyment of the book. So I don't really have a solid top whatever number of books. But The Book of Daniel is a standout for me. I thoroughly enjoyed reading it. But it's probably been 10 years since I've read it. And I almost immediately loaned out my copy and have never seen it again. So...
Do you remember who you loaned it to?
I'm pretty sure it was Kate's mum, but she doesn't have it. So whether she's loaned it on or she gave it back to me and I lost it, we don't know what happened to it, but it's disappeared. It has evaporated. It was... I loved it so much that I would have reread it 3 or 4 times if I still had a copy by now. And it's only because I haven't gone out and bought it again that I haven't reread it.
Yeah. Now, the next book on our lists are the same.
Oh, same.
But
Anna Karenina?
Very different reasons. Yep, it's Anna Karenina.
Anna Karenina.
So, much like I've said with Wuthering Heights, I didn't like this book. And
he's wrong.
I don't want to say this now. I feel like I may have been a bit hasty and might need to give it a second chance.
Yes.
But she's so certain. He was verbose and long-winded, and I can't stand.
Look, as someone who, rags on Dickens for the very things that I love about Tolstoy, I do make room for you to still not like this.
The thing is, since reading Anna Karenina, I have read War and Peace, and I like War and Peace. I enjoyed War and Peace. It took me a long time to get into it, but once I got into it, I enjoyed it. Mm-hmm. I struggle with Russian books because they all have two names and then a title, and then
it's like reading a
nicknames.
fantasy epic. Yeah.
Yeah, and then they're all quite similar for me because they're all called Natasha or, you know, like Ivan or no, not Ivan, Ivan. You know, like they're all Boris and for me, I'm just like the Russian character spoke to the Russian character, and that's really when you're talking about a Russian book.
Yeah. I used to do something that's probably super privileged, and I don't know if I should even say this publicly because someone would probably call me racist. But if there's a name that I struggle with knowing how to pronounce it immediately, I anglicise it. I find a word that it reminds me of by the shape of its letters, and I replace the name with another name. To such an extent that name doesn't have to be a name. I can call characters objects. If I think that someone's name looks like the word for microwave, then that's what they are known as in my brain the entire time I read them. Yeah, inanimate objects is really common for me because they have to be different from each other, and it's often about the shape of the letters and what that reminds me of rather than necessarily the Anglo version. Like I would never call a Voldus a Walter. Like I would never.
Which is your grandfather?
That's my grandfather's name. So Voldus is his native name, but he was known as Walter in Australia. I don't just anglicise it. It's about the shape of the letters for me because that's what helps my brain remember when I get back to that character's name again. But that's how I've always done it since I was a small child.
Yeah.
And so
I actually know what you mean. I don't do it by shape, I do it by sounds, but yes.
But that's because you audiobook, so that makes sense.
Well, even when I read, I do it by sounds, and even with our business, we have. Sorry, the dog is insisting that I play tug with him, which is all the noise you can hear, and I'm trying to.
You're trying to make him be quiet. It's fine.
I'm trying to make him be quiet, but we have a customer whose last name sounds a little bit like the word falafel, not a lot, and I always call her Andrea Falafel.
Her name is nothing like falafel.
I said it once and it sticks.
So good.
So anyway,
she will not know herself if she's watching this video. She won't be like, "Hey, they're talking about me," because her name is nothing like falafel.
I'm not sure what you're talking about. My name is Smith.
Oh, that's good.
You know who I mean.
Yeah, I do.
So
it's because we don't have many Andreas.
We have multiple.
Yeah.
Anyway, getting back to Anna Karenina, one of the reasons that I really didn't like this was it's broken up into 8 books, and the last book entirely takes place in the head of Levin, one of the 4 main characters in this book. And I thought, oh, come on, that's a bit. But now I suspect I'll have much more tolerance for what Tolstoy is saying. I'm much more tolerant, and I find much more joy in rambling.
Yes, one of the reasons I want to read this, and I'm pretty sure the next one on my list is War and Peace, is because for me, Russian literature was a thing of university days. So I was in my sort of late teens, early 20s when I first read...
Oh, that's not long ago.
Aww, that's beautiful. So
was that last week?
It's been a while. And I know that I'll get more out of it now. I think the more books you collect, the more you get out of some of these reads, and I think the life experience, and it changes your perspective. I think there are some books that you have a fear that your changed perspective might mean that they don't stand the test of time, but I don't think that's going to happen for me with Tolstoy. I truly loved my experience with Tolstoy the first time around. I have revisited his short stories again and again and again and again, but I haven't recommitted to the longer works since I first read them, and I should do.
Yeah. Now, before we go on with the next one, what I'm going to do is get a dog treat. There you go, buddy. Piss off.
Aww,
no, I like him. I like him. He's very demanding of my attention when I don't want to give it to him. My next book, Machiavelli The Prince.
Ooh, I enjoyed that.
Right. So, literally, my book review for this says 4 stars, but I bet you the next time I read this, and I will reread it, 5 stars. That's all it says.
It's not a very long one, and I found it quite funny because it's, satirical.
It's so smart. There's so much in this. Also, at the time, we were watching the HBO series The Borgias,
which was cool. I enjoyed that.
Don't know, The Prince is not just a satire, but it's a satire of Caesar Borgia or Cesare Borgia. I'm not sure how that should be pronounced, but one of them, and he is a super interesting character in history, as to is his father, and his sister Lucrezia Borgia is super interesting too. So getting the views of one of the smartest people alive about him and how he controlled people and all of that is super, super interesting.
Yeah, I can't wait till you reread that. I think that's going to be fun.
Yeah. So next one on your list is actually War and Peace.
Yeah, so I feel like I've covered this. I feel like this is, it's not quite a nostalgia read and not quite a I didn't get it all read. It's a bit of a combo of the two. But I don't remember.
Are you...
No, I don't remember what I was going to say.
It was much the same as Anna Karenina for you, in that you enjoyed it and you wanted to reread it.
Yeah, I feel like I pretty much covered this when I was talking about Anna Karenina. I read it when I was in uni, and I want to reread it with my now fully grown-up brain.
Next on my list is Tess of the Durbervilles by Thomas Hardy. Now, Thomas Hardy is one of my all-time favourite writers. I love the gritty, dirty horribleness that is Hardy. And Tess of the Durbervilles is a novel that examines the lot of a milkmaid, so basically working class women in Victorian times and the hypocrisy of that. Hardy gets criticised for not being relevant anymore, and that is bunk.
Bunk?
Bunk.
Oh, good word.
That is absolute tosh.
Bunk.
Bunk. Hardy is more relevant than any other Victorian writer in modern time.
Ooh.
Yeah,
Bold statement.
Bold statement. And Tess of the Durbervilles is his most famous work. It's the work that first got me to like Hardy, and can I tell you that I was reading this book and I was like, oh, more horrible stuff is happening to Tess. Oh, more horrible. Oh, and then now Tess is complaining that horrible stuff keeps happening to her, because it does. And then something happened, and I was like, oh, and it all fell into place, and I feel like knowing what happens at the end will help that. But also what happened in that book made me love Hardy and made me listen to his books in a way that I wasn't listening to him.
I think it's really interesting that in this case, a spoiler would not have spoilt this book for you, but maybe actually made it better.
To be honest,
I wonder if that's like a whole category of books.
Hardy foreshadows, and he's not particularly subtle with his foreshadowing. I should have seen this coming.
Yeah.
Right? But I did, and look, I mean, I'm not trying to spoil it, but if you don't see it coming, you know, you got to ask yourself why not. But I can be quite dumb when I'm reading a book, and
I think we choose to be. I think we choose to.
Yeah, I don't really engage my brain until after I finished reading the book. I don't really try and think about it too much until after I put the book down. I'm just sort of reading what happens, and
I definitely try and experience the book in sort of two state. Like I like to think of it washing over me as I read it. Like just I'm not putting anything in. I'm just allowing it to pass through my brain, and then I often find that it takes me a couple of days to really firm up my ideas about it after I finish reading it, because it's like I gather up all that I've read and then process it.
It's like food. It's taste versus nourishment.
Yeah, totally. Like you taste it, and it's all about the experience of it and the hedonism of being able to read, and then it powers your brain rather than your body. Yeah, I like that. I like that little dissection. Yeah. That's good.
Anyway, Tess of the Durbervilles is a sad story about a milkmaid and the two men who love her in, I want to say, love her. Because
in like man ways? Like because they're men?
I wouldn't even like...
Like it's not even a gender thing, it's just... Okay, sorry, I won't push, just spoil it.
Read it.
The Deverry series. So Catherine Kerr and the Deverry series is my... I won't say my first foray into fantasy, because I know that I started with The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings. But sort of as a youngish teenager, they were the fantasy series that I got into, I guess, while everyone else was reading Wheel of Time. That's what I'm trying to think of. I was reading the Deverry series by Catherine Kerr, and I loved it, but I never finished it. I got distracted. Whoops. So I'd like to go back and reread everything that I've read of the Deverry series so that I can finish it with the first few books fresh in my brain.
This is what I'm doing with Wheel of Time right now.
Exactly. You're rereading so you can finish it, yeah.
For exactly the same reasons I got distracted and didn't finish it.
Yeah, I don't think that the Deverry series is quite as long as Wheel of Time. I don't think it's 15 books long.
The Wheel of Time is actually the longest ever fantasy series.
There you go. But I do think it's better written. So I would definitely love, but my stipulation of this is I have to make sure I own all of the books before I begin. So that is what I'm going to do over the next some point in my life.
Sensible too, because...
Yes, because I got distracted last time, and I will get distracted again. I know it.
So many books. All right. Next on my list is Far From the Madding Crowd. This is another Thomas Hardy book. This is the first Thomas Hardy book that I read, and I want to reread it because I suspect that I will get more out of it. Really quite similar to Tess, not as good as Tess. As a beside, Hardy has some of the best character names, and Sheila Everdeen is one of my favourites. I quite like Eustacia Vi from Return of the Native as well, but Sheila Everdeen is one of my favourite character names ever, and she's also one of my favourite characters ever. Hardy has written a strong, opinionated female and made her the main character of a novel in a time when that wasn't what women should be. So...
yeah, and I think it's often, like even now, more unusual to be written like that by a man.
Yes, by a man. And also, the thing that was very unusual about Bathsheba at the time was she owned her own business and was the boss of multiple men. So...
Ooh, I like it.
Yes. Also, we've just read Eleanor Oliphant, and there is a Far From the Madding Crowd reference in Eleanor Oliphant, and it's got me thinking of it, really. No real. It's just got me thinking of it. And if you're wondering what that reference is, she says something about a heroine from a Thomas Hardy tale.
Oh, The Grapes of Wrath. So this is, does anyone ever wonder if they read their books in the right order? Because I don't think I have. I think I read The Grapes of Wrath before I read East of Eden, and I think that was wrong. So now that I've read East of Eden, I'd like to reread Grapes of Wrath and see if I enjoy it more after having read the East of Eden. Not that they are in any way linked, or it's not like they're a series. It's just that sometimes I think...
Sometimes stylistically it takes a bit to get used to an author. Is that what's going on? Or?
No, I definitely think that your brain takes what you've learned from other books and applies it to the next thing you read. And I think that having the warm fuzzy experience with East of Eden that I had, I liked Grapes of Wrath, but I'm surprised I didn't like it more. And I do wonder if I missed things because I wasn't expecting much.
It does seem to be the more the literature, the more book canon-y sort of one of the two, which is a bit surprising.
I find that completely surprising, but maybe that's because I read it first, and the only thing I'd read by Steinbeck at that point was Of Mice and Men. Like that was my entire exposure when I read The Grapes of Wrath, and since I've read quite a bit more, I wonder if my expectations weren't high enough. Like maybe my eyes weren't open enough, and I really it does make me question that. Like, what order should we read things in?
My next book is Daphne du Maurier's Rebecca. This was a book that wasn't what I was expecting it to be at about 3/4 through this book. It didn't finish as the book I was expecting it to be. And I wonder if I missed things. I don't want to say what it is. Have we got it, do we?
Yeah, I was just so completely distracted by the fact that I knew it was behind me. It's on my TBR.
I enjoyed this book, but I didn't love this book, and people love this book. It is, and I struggle to see just why it is that next level of good. So I would like to give it another try from that point of view, but really, I thought that this book was about a woman's place in a relationship and dealing with the woman that came before her. And that's certainly a bit of what it's about, but there is something else going on here which completely surprised me. And this is a psychological thriller cross, coming of age cross romance, which is not really how I would combine genres, and that makes it really interesting too because it's very well done.
Oh, A Clockwork Orange. I think this is another one I read too young. I read this way too young. I remember...
How old were you?
Probably way too young, actually. I think I was in high school.
Like 13 or what?
No, I think I was probably about 16. So probably just old enough to...
Same age as the characters.
Yeah. A Clockwork Orange for me was my stepdad mentioned that it was banned. We were talking about banned books. I remember so clearly the conversation. We were talking about banned books, and then we spoke about A Clockwork Orange, and he wouldn't tell me anything about the movie or the book. He felt that it was probably a bit much for my young brain, and that of course meant I was obsessed with it, and I went out and I found a copy as soon as I could.
How to make sure your kids read a book. Tell them they can't read it.
Tell them it was banned and it's too naughty for them. Oh my god. So totally the first thing I did. Yeah, so I went out and bought it secondhand and I read it, and I was definitely too young when I read it. I enjoyed it, and I think I understood most of it, but I know that a reread will give me more out of that book, and I have since seen the movie and had more exposure to the concepts. So I think that as, 20-something years have passed, I think I'm about ready for a reread.
Yeah, give away your age.
It's okay, I'm not ashamed.
Oh, you're not as vain as me.
He's the same age as me, so...
Alright, we got one left each. The last one on my list is The Shadow of the Wind, which is the first book in the Cemetery of Books world. This book was super popular a couple of years ago, and then not a lot is heard of it. And it's a thriller about forbidden books, and I don't really remember a lot about it, but I remember really enjoying it. I also remember thinking at the time, is this just a bit of enjoyable trash, or is this actually really literary, quite clever, and I'm not getting it? So I kind of want to reread that to see if I can, first of all, classify it as just a fun read, or if I can get it on a different level. But it was just a super fun romance thriller, adventure, Spanish weird book based in Barcelona, and like spies and everything, just all of the genres.
All of the genres.
All of the genres.
Spanish is a genre.
I can't decide whether this book is has a lot more layers to it than I appreciated or not. I certainly thought there may have been, but it was also very enjoyable from a plot point of view. So yeah. And now your last one isn't a book, it is an author.
We recently filmed a review of The Night Circus, which, if that's up, we'll pop the link in the description. And I had real trouble remembering the plot of The Tempest for part of that discussion. And I think there are certain plays for me, Shakespeare plays, that blend into one another because I've sort of read through the complete works of Shakespeare in a bit of a chunk, and anything I haven't seen as a play is sort of a little bit smushed all into one. So this isn't so much of a reread goal as I would really like to
experience more.
I'd like to go to the theatre more and see more of these plays as they were intended, performed, you know. And
not the Romeo and Juliet's and
Hamlet.
Hamlets.
No, I've seen Romeo and Juliet, and I've seen Hamlet, and A Midsummer Night's Dream. Like it's actually The Tempest and Two Gentlemen of Verona.
Winter's Tale.
Yeah, the less performed plays. I would like to see some of them. Probably the only one that I've seen that I'd really like to go and see again is King Lear, because that is my favourite.
Hey Nell, you know how you don't like Dickens? I hate Shakespeare.
I think that's really common, and that's fine. I don't love Shakespeare enough to fight you on it.
I'm 2 books away from having finished his entire
And you're really struggling to start them.
And I've been putting them off. I told myself I was 1 book away, and when I went and I had a look, there's actually 2 books there.
It is actually really handy for interpretation of other literature, I think, to have a good store of Shakespeare in your brain. And that is definitely one of the reasons I would like a refresh, because The Night Circus had a lot of Tempest. In it, and I got some of them, but I didn't pick up on every reference. I know I didn't.
It's kind of like a knowledge of the Bible, a knowledge of Shakespeare, isn't it?
Yeah, that's it. Like, I've read the Bible cover to cover for that reason, because I think it helps interpret literary references for it. I loathed that experience, so I probably will never reread that. But I think a good knowledge of Shakespeare is important. So that's our list of videos we'd like to reread.
Videos we'd like to reread.
That's our list of books that we would like to reread.
So, just some generic questions. Have you read any of these books? Do you like them? Do you dislike them? Do you want to reread them? And what books do you want to reread?